Hello, welcome to The Big Fight. So this has been a week which has been dominated by headlines and blaring news bulletins about urban Naxals and the fact that a set of them, according to the Pune police and certain TV channels, have actually been arrested. Others say that these are human rights activists who've been put behind bars and essentially they are paying the penalty for expressing dissent against the ruling government. Now, I think most people would agree that Naxal violence is something that should be condemned. Any violence, in fact, should be condemned. At the same time, were these people guilty or not guilty of colluding with that violence in some form or the other? Well, the Pune police seems to have come out right now and saying, yes, they were. Others will say, is there enough evidence for that? And should you be arresting people and locking them up till there is enough evidence? So those are just some of the issues that we are going to be discussing on The Big Fight today. A range of experts joining us to help us shed some light on that, starting with Susan Abraham. It's great to have you joining us. She's an advocate, wife of Vernon Gonzalez, one of the people who has actually been arrested right now. Aruna Roy joining us as well. M.N. Singh, former Mumbai Police Commissioner. Noel Swaranjit Sen is former DGP of Andhra Pradesh, has worked on the issue of the Naxals for a long period of time. Prashant Bhushan is joining us, senior advocate, counsel for petitioners. And here in the studio, we have Neerja Chaudhary with us, journalist, columnist, political commentator, and Deshratan Nigam as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. All right, let me start by coming to you, Susan. Pune police has now come out very clearly and saying there is enough evidence of a plot to kill Narendra Modi, and there is enough evidence to link the people arrested to that plot. How would you respond to the statements that we've heard from them?
From day one of the case registered by Vishrambagh Police, Pune, that is the FIR which was registered on 8th of January 2018. Then there were the raids and seizures which happened in the month of 17th of April, two months later. And the arrests which took place on the 6th of June to the latest round of arrests which happened on the 28th of August. It's been a series of fabulous stories which have been spun. I just want to come to the crux of the FIR. As we all know, the original FIR related to the Bhima Koregaon Parishad, which was held on the 31st of December 2017 in Pune, Shaniwar Wada. No violence, no riots, no untoward incidents, no offense registered. It is when people went to Bhima Koregaon, which is kilometers away from Pune city, it's in Pune rural, and the attacks happened, that you first hear of the crimes which were registered. And these were against people like Milind Ekbote, Sambhaji Bide. The very first FIRs were registered against them for the violence. But then we see on the 3rd or 4th of January that there were 2 FIRs registered against Jignesh Mewani and Umar Khalid, because they were speakers, very effective speakers at this Parishad of 31st December. 8th of January, 8 days later, there is a further FIR registered by the Pune police in which the organizers of the Elgar Parishad are named as accused, 6 of them.
But ma'am, if I could just, I mean, that's not what they now seem to be saying has nothing to do with those FIRs. They now seem to be talking about a letter written by Roma Wilson to Comrade Prakash, yep, weapons being developed, a plot to kill Narendra Modi. The entire charge sheet now seems, or the reasons why they're saying these arrests are being carried out seem to be more to do with that as opposed to what happened in Bhima Koregaon.
But Vikram, please remember that the arrests which happened on the 6th and the arrests which have happened now are precisely in the same FIR. That's the point I'm making. the FIR registered on the 8th of January, it is in that FIR that these 10 arrests have been carried out. And that FIR talks about the Bhima Koregaon Elgar Parishad having incited people to commit violence on the people who are proceeding to observe the 200th anniversary of Bhima Koregaon on the next day. So the police have not let go of the narrative of the Bhima Koregaon Parishad at all. They want to malign the Elgar Parishad and at the same time build this fabulous story regarding all this plots, etc., etc. I have been going to Pune court from the day of the first day of remand, which was the arrest happened on the 6th. All of them were produced. The first 5, Surendra Gadling, eminent criminal lawyer, who has fought for the last 30 years for poor tribals, workers who have been wrongly arrested under UAPA. He's accused in this case. Professor Shoma Sen, who was about to retire 2 months later, who was a democratic rights activist, she's been arrested in this case. So
that's exactly, what you're saying.
Sudhir Dhaule is the only person, who is named in the original FIR.
Okay, so
and today you have more people.
So
I
think the point I'm trying to make.
Absolutely.
The point I'm trying to make is that I hear what you're saying. What the police seems to be now saying, I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. I'm saying what the police now seems to be saying is, well, okay, it's really about weapons being discovered, rocket launchers, plot to kill Modi Raj, Rajiv Gandhi type attack. This seems to be the narrative right now. So I'm trying to ask you, where would you stand or Vernon Gonzalez stand on any of these issues?
Can I just fill in between the remand dates? We have the police releasing these letters. I can tell you firstly that this is against the law. There is a Bombay High Court judgment which I have with me of Justice Oka and Justice Gadkari of 7th October 2014, which clearly states that the police issuing statements to the press during investigation is illegal, and this is based on a circular which has been issued by the Maharashtra government. Okay. Why is the Pune police being allowed to get away with this, and why are the media houses giving so much importance to these letters? And thirdly, why are these letters not filed in the court proceedings? I will tell you why. Because if the defense lawyers get hold of these letters, we would be able to pull apart each and every fraudulent aspect of this.
All right. I think we've got your points loud and clear. I just want to go around to everyone else and see what they make of them. M.N. Singh, why don't I start off by asking you, actually, you've been Mumbai Police Commissioner. Why would letters be leaked in the press and be taken up in TV news channels, not given to the accused? Is there any direct evidence in link? Because look, Maoist violence obviously is wrong. A plot to kill Narendra Modi obviously would be wrong. Somebody guilty of conspiring to kill Narendra Modi should obviously be caught and should obviously be punished. Those are all obvious aspects. The question whether these people have anything to do with it one way or the other and whether therefore they should be arrested is a slightly different question.
Well, Bikram, before I begin, just on a point of clarification, it seems that there are two police forces involved in this investigation. Bhima Koregaon is in the rural area of Pune district, which is under the Pune Rural Police, if I am not wrong, and the Shaniwarwada Elgar Parishad, which happened a day earlier, was in the city of Pune, which comes under the jurisdiction of the Pune Police Commissioner. So to say that in the first case of rioting, those two fellows were involved and nothing has been done, and now the police, Pune police has taken steps and arrested all these people. I think we are confusing. These are two different cases and therefore they are being differently investigated, though there may be a link in some way. Now coming to the issue of this, you see, there are two sets of things. One is that the Pune police is proceeding on the basis of what they say is credible evidence, which they have recovered during the course of investigation in the raids and all that. They have seized lots of material which has given out information that there is an attempt to mobilize the militants, to collect weapons, fundraising, and also a plan, a conspiracy to assassinate the Prime Minister. Now, this is a very serious allegation and a very sensitive investigation. Now, the police is proceeding on this premise that there is a credible evidence and they have got the evidence in their hand. On the other hand, the civil society is proceeding entirely on the basis of their perceptions that these are very good people, God sent good people, and having their own respective professions, honorable people, intellectuals, advocates, blah, 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 they cannot do anything. I think, do we proceed on the basis of solid evidence, or do we proceed only on the basis of certain perceptions?
Okay.
And let me tell you, who killed Mahatma Gandhi? Was he an ordinary criminal in the street?
There's one point though that, Mr. Hemant Singh, you're missing out to some extent, that on the assumption, so what civil society and some of the activists, we're going to be hearing from them in a couple of minutes, would be saying is, process is sometimes the punishment by itself. What if all of this evidence that has come out right now is shown to have no connection with any of the innocent, and yet they spend months, weeks, years in jail? You know, and I know that it happens all the time in this country.
I will tell you, I will give you an answer in brief. Now, the matter is before the Supreme Court. It has been taken up by the public itself, by the civil society. And the Supreme Court has fixed the hearing on the coming 6th of September. I think the police will be required to place all the evidence before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court will scrutinize and give a judgment. Why are we going to town and raising all this hue and cry? Let us wait. There is a legal process.
Do we believe in the process of law? I think once the Supreme Court got involved, I think the hue and cry did die down a little bit. But let me just throw what you said to Aruna Roy, now joining us, one of the best-known social activists, also a former bureaucrat. Aruna Roy, the rule of law, I guess, is the question that is constantly coming up. You heard Hemant Singh saying, and others in the government have said, and the Pune police is saying, if we have evidence that there is a plot to kill Narendra Modi, would you expect us not to act on that? And acting on that is the rule of law, and therefore people should fight it out in the courts, because that's the right place to fight it out.
Actually, I just see this very differently. I see that, first of all, as a former civil servant, I know, and I've also been a victim of fabricated stories. When we are beaten up, the poor, and we go to a police station and subsequently to the government, we hear that we have been the perpetrators of the crime. This is such a common phenomenon in villages. I mean, it's not at all unusual to find this happening everywhere. So to believe that what goes for evidence is the truth is another thing. So the evidence has to be very, very honestly examined. And I don't know whether in any system today that honesty and that courage to look at facts is the truth rather than what is required for them to believe or state is a big moral issue that hangs over the whole of civil society. It's not my story, it's the story of hundreds of thousands of Indians who feel that none of these should go and be established as essentials for prosecution before there is considerable evidence to prove that it is true. So to have a case against people without this pre-examination of facts itself, for me, is not quite correct. And it doesn't lead us towards the rule of law. The other thing I feel is that civil society has occupied the space of questioning any government, whichever government comes, for the implementation of constitutional rights. And all the people who have been accused are people who are uncomfortable for any establishment and for any state, because they raise issues of constitutional validity and they amplify the voices of very poor people who are completely neglected because of a society which has problems, which has a system which has problems, and increasingly an economic paradigm in which they are seen as constant irritants, setting up issues of legal correctness, of constitutional validity of their positions, and they must be removed at some cost or the other. So what is happening is a combination of many factors, but I think the problem lies in the fact that we expect, and I still expect, that it's my government and my government should give me justice. There's a very great difference between looking at processes through a focus and a prism of just what has happened or what is reported to have happened and what is the reality.
All right. So you're saying this is really about silencing people who are speaking out, and especially people who are speaking out for the poor. Prashant Bhushan, let me just throw that to you. If there is acts of violence which the police have got, what they're saying is legitimate and enough adequate evidence, and they're going to present that before the Supreme Court on the 6th, then what's wrong in saying, all right, fine, then the police is well within its right to act upon that?
Well, if they had credible evidence of a plot to kill the Prime Minister or a plot to overthrow the government by violent means in which these people were involved, then I am sure that the police would have registered a completely different FIR on the basis of this evidence, and that this investigation would not have been handled then by the Pune police, it would have been handled by the NIA or by any other agency. Secondly, how can the police, the Pune police, hold a press conference in violation of court orders and court guidelines and just bandy about some letters without putting them out in the public domain? By just saying earlier they bandied around some purported letter that they recovered from the computer of Rona Wilson suggesting a plot to assassinate the Prime Minister, etc. These kind of things are just bandied around in press conferences in order to create prejudice, in order to allow these North Korean channels to run these kind of stories to prejudice public minds against these people in clear violation of the law. And how does the police go and arrest people without even translating the documents, the FIRs which are in Marathi, etc.? They are not shown to the accused, they are not even shown to the judge, even translated copies of the FIRs or the arrest memos, etc. They take them in Marathi and seek to arrest and take them on remand, etc. Who is going to believe this cock and bull story? I know most of these people personally quite well. I know Sudha Bharadwaj for the last so many years. I know Anand Tel Tumble, I know Gautam Navlakha, who has been a sterling human rights activist for the last 20 years.
That
the point
probably
is, it is incredible to believe that these kind of people would be involved in
Prashant,
a violent plot to
those statements in
overthrow
this
the
day and
government.
age would probably just, those statements would probably just go to mean somebody says that therefore your name should also go up on a list of urban Naxals. The fact you knew them.
No, it's all right. It's all right. What I am saying is this:
the lists that are going
that,
around.
that you can't just take these kind of things being thrown around by the police commissioner at a press conference at face value. Let them produce those letters. Let them, if they have the courage to hold a press conference on the basis of these letters, let them put them out in the public domain.
MN Singh, you know, on this entire question, you were talking about rural police, urban police. It's actually interesting because the urban Pune police seems to be saying urban Naxalites and, you know, there's a plot for violence. The rural Pune police seem to be saying these were right-wing activists responsible for Bhima Koregaon to start off with. So there was some discrepancy out there. And thirdly, these letters that are ostensibly the basis for what the police is now saying they are doing, why should those not be made public?
Well, let me first answer Mrs. Aruna Roy Vikram. It's very unfortunate that she has such opinion about the police, and she says she completely distrusts the police. All right, if you don't trust the police, fine, but do you have trust in the judiciary or no? Matter is ultimately going before the Supreme Court. Do you have faith in the judiciary? Then why do you prejudge the whole thing? That's one. Two, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, you see, all these issues that he has raised is all technical issues. They do not take away the merit of the case. And I am sorry to say he is a very senior advocate, but I think some of his arguments are very amateurish. There may be his relative also involved in the case tomorrow. Are we not going to take action against him? What kind of argument is this? I think it is all people, and he is saying that the police is trying to influence the public opinion and the judiciary. On the contrary, my allegation is that it is these civil society people and people like Advocate Prashant Bhushan who are trying to even prejudice the judiciary and the public opinion. There is a whole lot of hue and cry going on in the country. After all, police are only following the due process of law. Challenge them in the court of law. How can you say that police commissioner has spoken only once and his deputy commissioner spoke once, whereas all kinds of variety of people in the civil society and all that are speaking day in and day out and creating a public opinion, a big hype. My charge is that it is the civil society activists who are prejudicing the whole process of the law, and that for God's sake, let the law take its own course and let us not create such a hype.
Okay, let me throw that to the people you mentioned, and then I'm going to come to my studio guests as well. So let me start with you, Aruna Roy. He said that if you don't have trust in the police, do you have trust in the judiciary? So wait for the judiciary to say something on this.
But I think he's so prejudiced against civil society, and this prejudice that he has expressed so clearly in this last few minutes, that he thinks civil society is responsible for everything that goes wrong in society, shows the mentality and the prejudice of a police system.
It's obvious.
I'm just saying that the police system is as subject to society and to politics as anybody else. So therefore, if a police report comes out, that's why there have been all kinds of, excuse me, just keep quiet for a minute. But all things that it's even under the law, a confession to a police officer is not taken seriously unless it's validated by something else. So it's something that because of the power of that individual, when I was an IAS officer, I could have got many things done because I was in seat of power. But when I've been on the other side, I know exactly what happens when in a situation of powerlessness, what happens when you go and you want to get to the truth. So I think somewhere we have to understand, he lives in India, I live in India, and we all know what happens. Not the entire police is not to be trusted, but that the system perpetuates a kind of mistrust, you have to understand. And if I have to understand, I have to understand that there may be some elements in civil society. Civil society, by the way, please let me finish, is a very large term. It doesn't include just me and you. It includes people who've been lynching and killing people. It includes people who have been taking videos of lynchings and spreading it all over the place. It includes the spreading of hate. It includes the spreading of social terror. It includes all of them. What have you done with them? You think I don't belong to that segment of civil society which does any of these things. I brought with a number of other people laws under the Constitution, fought on the streets of this country in a very Gandhian way to ask for my rights. And I know that many of the police officials were very good, but the system is one thing and individuals are quite another.
Noel saying 2-3 major points have been made. Number one, it's almost an act of prejudice to be locking up people unless it is very clear that there is evidence against them. That's one point. And the second point Aruna Roy made is that it is almost, the system is unfairly biased against the poor and the powerless and those who don't have a voice.
There is some justification. In certain cases, people may have been locked up. But in the present case, we are discussing about the FIR and the letter which emanated, which gave reason for the FIR. Well, that letter states very clearly that certain elements of the human rights people have been planning an assassination against the Prime Minister, which becomes a very, very serious offense. I know about Varvar Rao personally. I think there would be enough evidence to nail him, but the others I do not know. So that is one issue which is important. On the other hand, the veracity of the letter has not been confirmed. And really, I do not feel that the Naxals or the Maoists would be as careless and blatant in communicating with each other as that letter seems to state. So unless proper investigation is done regarding the genuineness of that letter, which carries such very serious charges against certain human rights persons, I would be very careful in taking action. The second point that you wanted me to comment upon is whether social justice exists for the poor and powerless. I don't think it exists in this country. And therefore, people who are in the civil society, who are airing their remarks and their views, and human rights, especially in a country like India, which is riven with all kinds of prejudices against the have-nots, I think these societies are very well valid. All the speakers certainly do have a viewpoint. The only thing is, in case there is solid evidence to nail these human rights elements, I think maybe the police has been a little quick on the draw.
Okay.
That's all. But we can't doubt the genuineness of the police in the sense that they've done their job.
Susan Abraham, I'm again coming back to you. The specific letter that is being spoken about, and there's all of this conversation about Russian grenade launchers and Rona Wilson, whoever she is, and Comrade Prakash. Does Vernon Gonsalves know any of these people?
From day one, as I said, that was on the 7th of June when the first 5 were produced in Pune Sessions Court, and at every remand date, various letters have been read out by the public prosecutor, Mrs. Pawar, and then leaked to the press. But not a single one has been filed in the court nor given to the defense lawyers. Now, I can tell you on the 29th, when the latest 5 arrested persons were 3 of them were produced in Pune court, and the other 2 were kept in house arrest because of intervention of Delhi High Court and the Punjab and Haryana High Court. There are 18 reasons listed in the remand application seeking the police custody remand of these 3 persons. But not a single one is there a mention of a so-called assassination letter. There is not a single point about the purchase of arms. There is not a single point about arms training. So, this has been the pattern from the 7th of June. As per cyber law procedure and law, there is a method of sealing. If you take out the hard disk from a computer, you have to have a procedure for sealing. Whereas what has been done is the Pune police entered our house with their own computers, with their own pen drives, and in what way are we to prove what was planted and not planted? And this is precisely the case based on which the appeal for Professor Sai Baba rests, that the way in which material can be planted today in any computer that is seized from a house, in a laptop, in your pen drive, this is open knowledge to any cyber expert.
Deshatha
The
Nigam.
Panchas who are supposed to witness were sitting with us.
Okay, so Deshatha Nigam, you've been hearing this entire raging debate all week long about who is an urban Naxal and Me Too and urban Naxal and lists being drawn out about people, which is why this has immediately become to be seen as, okay, this is the government cracking down on anybody whose voice is uncomfortable or unpalatable, or as Aruna Roy was saying, is speaking about causes that the government does not like.
See, I don't agree with that proposition. We all know Naxalism and Maoism is banned in India because of the violent philosophy and the brutal violent ways that they have undertaken. And police is investigating the links of these people with these others, and they have evidence. Now, to outrightly reject it is not what I'll do, or I'll straight away take a side of anybody here. The due process of law requires.
We don't know what the evidence is, by the way. There's no indication of any direct evidence linking any of these people to the plot to kill Narendra Modi.
I'll tell you why. When the lawyers, the way the lawyers are talking on the panel, I'm shocked. They are hiding the due process of law. The investigation is done in secrecy so that others who are involved in it do not come to know and run away or destroy the evidence. So, the investigation is always done in secrecy. Second, when the person is arrested, they are only shown the arrest warrants with the sections mentioned, not the evidence. The stage of providing the documents and evidence arises at the time of filing of the charge sheet, when the entire set is given to the other side. It is at that stage, because if you give them now, the so many indications, so many clues which are there, the other side will get aware of it and they will start destroying the evidence. So
but
therefore,
can you arrest somebody till that charge sheet is filed? You can keep somebody in jail for a year, 2 years, 3 years.
No,
Actually, nothing came out of the charge sheet. We're so sorry. Go
I'll
home.
answer that. I'll answer that. When a person is arrested, it is brought before the judiciary within 24 hours. That's the process. And he has to be produced. And the court will apply its mind whether this person should be kept in custody or should not be kept in custody. It is not for the police to keep it for all times to come. Here, within 24 hours, the judiciary comes into the picture. They decide whether he is to be kept, whether he is dangerous enough to be kept inside or not dangerous enough, whether he will tamper with the evidence or he will run away from justice. These are the points which the court sees, not the police. Police's duty is to immediately arrest if there are cognizable offense, non-bailable offense is there, and immediately within 24 hours to be produced before the court. And there the role of the police ends. It is up to the court to remand the person or not to. That fact has been hidden by all the lawyers, and they are saying that it should be in public domain. Document should be in public domain. No, okay. not at this stage.
Prashant Bhushan, you heard what Desh Ratan Nigam was saying right now. How would you like to respond to him?
If the police cannot give the evidence to the accused, how are they producing the evidence or claiming to produce the evidence in a press conference? All right, how does the police then hold a press conference and waive this evidence and mention some of this evidence by saying that there is a plot to kill the PM or that these people are planning a violent overthrow of the government, we have got these letters, etc.? On what basis does the Pune Police Commissioner come and address a press conference on this? This is totally against the law. Totally against the law. It is against the settled law. It is against several orders that the Supreme Court and the High Court have issued. In fact, the Supreme Court in D.K. Basu's case has laid down detailed guidelines about the manner in which arrests can be carried out. Each one of those guidelines were flouted in these arrests. The Supreme Court has also laid down that just because you register an FIR against somebody, that is not a ground for going and arresting him. FIR is not the ground to arrest a person. Arrest should only be done if and only if you come to a reasonable conclusion that this person will flee from justice or that he will tamper with evidence. How could you say this against these kind of persons?
Let the judiciary
even while you are investigating, how can you hold them, go and arrest them in custody, keep them in custody?
Now let me answer your question.
What do you mean let the judiciary? This is an injunction against the police. The Supreme Court has said that the police cannot arrest in these circumstances unless these two things are present.
Mr. Bhushan, let me answer your question now. The very fact the police has done a press conference does not prove that these 5 people are innocent. They have to go through the due process of law. If police is...
I'm not saying that.
So, therefore you are not vouching for their innocence. You agree with me that you are not vouching for their innocence. That will be decided by the judiciary. Secondly, if the police has made and flouted the law, they must be taken for task. I am not saying so, but you cannot investigate, but you cannot interfere with the process of investigation and the judicial process. And the innocence right now, they are accused person. They are neither convicted nor they are innocent. They are accused person.
What do you mean? I am not interfering. Mr. M.M. Singh tried to equate civil society police. The police has various statutory powers, etc. They are doing a job under the law. They are empowered and authorized under the law. They have a completely different responsibility from civil society. Once the police goes and arrests people when ostensibly there is no justification for arresting such well-known, known to be law-abiding,
Mr. Bhushan, you are going on faith and belief.
Human rights activists, and thereafter,
you are only
the civil society responds to that.
All right, can I
believe in faith, nothing else.
Can I get
police can go and violate any law?
Okay,
I think I would say in the beginning, agreeing with you, if there is a plot to assassinate the Prime Minister of India, of course the police must investigate. We would all agree with that, number one. If that were the case, that doesn't figure in the FIR. what the FIR says, these people are guilty of Elgar Parishad, which led to Bhima Koregaon violence, and plot to create unrest in the country. Now, if it was so serious a charge as the police now are saying, subsequently, would the Supreme Court have reacted in a way that dissent is the safety valve of a democracy? No small words.
Not reflected in the order.
No, I'm not saying
It's
that.
an
Would
oral
the
observation.
apex court of the country, looking at the thing prima facie, says this, okay, they say house arrest till 6th September, we put it off. Now, my thing is, subsequently, the allegation seems to be building up. And you know, I was looking at the charges to wage war against the country, involved in procuring arms, funding Naxal activities, Elgar Parishad to create unrest, of course, links with Kashmiri separatists, to target the high political functionaries. You couldn't get more heavy duty charges. And what is the evidence so far? What is really deeply troubling to me, you know, you refer to this letter or the email which whose veracity the people have questioned. Now, that says Rajiv type incident and ending Modi Raj. Those are the words that have come so far, you know, in the media, what we've read, quote unquote. Now, ending Modi Raj need not be assassination of the Prime Minister. You can democratically...
Rajiv Gandhi type assassination.
Well, that type incident, yes, certainly those are very worrying words if that is the plan. But I would say, before you put 5 people who've given their lives, at least ostensibly so far, in organizing tribals in different states, speaking up for the poor, with the kind of evidence that so far come, as we speak today, a kind of innuendo charge. I'm deeply troubled. You know, what is going on in our country?
You have not seen
so
the
we'll
evidence.
See. So I'll tell you what, let's see. But here's the point which here's the point which I think needs to be made. One of the things, and I'm going to throw that to the audience actually right now. In any situation where, let's say you say, oh, the evidence will come. Now, supposing the evidence when it actually comes is laughed out by the courts, and the court looks at it and says, you were arresting people on the basis of this. What are the consequences? And I'm asking this for a very important reason. Every single day, it's not just in these 5 or 6 cases, every single day, every single month, every single year, if you look at our prisons, there will be people there who've been locked up, under trials by the thousands or the hundreds and thousands, many of whom will eventually be shown to be completely innocent. I'm not saying this may or may not apply in this case, but it is one of the things that we need to keep in our minds, that then there should be consequences. Let me just get some of the others and I'll get final thoughts. Some of the people out here from Naxal influenced areas also.
Our country gave us the check and balance for everything, executive, judiciary and legislature. The fundamental question over here is that the police are given discretionary powers, and whatever they want to do, they do it at the grassroots level. When you're talking about the evidence, what is the proof that police cannot create evidence for themselves to prove themselves that they are right? Because this has happened in the Naxal area, whatever you say, this has happened in the tribal areas. I have been the evidence where the police has distorted everything and they have presented the evidence in such a manner so that their viewpoint can be published.
All right, so if somebody does that, what should happen? Anybody else with a point of view? Yeah, the gentleman there at the very end, yeah.
The rural police of the area says that they were just right-wing activists, but the urban police says that they were Naxals. Now, there's a discrepancy in the police force itself. So, is it that we can just lock them up until the police is itself not clear what they are, who they are?
The police now seems to be saying that, yeah, that is almost irrelevant what happened in Bhima Koregaon. What's happening now is there's a plot to kill Narendra Modi, which is really behind all of this. All right, I just have enough time now to get a quick final line from each one of you, just to say what you think should actually happen next. Can I start off with you, Susan Abraham, and I'm going to get everyone in to quickly just say one line. So, Susan, what are you anticipating happens next as we work our way towards the 6th of September?
Vikram, I'd just like to point out that this whole story about the purported plot to assassinate the PM, the actual assassinations that have taken place of Gauri Lankesh, Dabolkar, Pansare and Kalburgi, there is an entire plot that is unraveling today, where actual seizures of arms and bomb making and everything has been, but there is no talk of declaring the Sanatan and Sansthan unlawful under the Unlawful Activities Act.
Okay.
There is no UAPA imposed against Sambhaji Bide and Milind Ekbote. So why this is a discrepancy?
All right, that's a valid point, Susan. Thanks for joining us, and you're right, that's one of the questions that I think needs to be answered. Noel Swaranjit Sen, quick last word from you.
I would like to say that, you know, there is a lot of injustice in the society, especially where the downtrodden and the powerless are concerned. And for the 72 years, the consecutive governments have been going for the missing the grain for the chaff. The realities that exist at grassroots in our society are really appalling, and we have really not been able to address ourselves to ameliorating the hardships that still exist. Now, when you don't do that, how do you expect the thought which exists, which favors the Naxals and Maoists, how do you expect to neutralize that thought? And as long as you don't attend to neutralizing that thought process, I think you're going to continue to have all sorts of problems. The only thing I have against them is that they look at every incident only from one side. What about all the police and the civilized society which is killed, and they don't seem to feel for them at all? Have these human rights activists brought out any tangible solutions to the problems that exist? Do they know what is happening at the village level? I don't think so. I think it's lost. They have to introspect on their own activities and their approach to be able to deliver something which people can call honorable where human rights are concerned, human rights activists are concerned.
All right, let me throw that to Aruna Roy. Aruna?
I feel there's extensive prejudice. I feel that rationality is moving away from us rapidly. And to allow this rationality to move away from us rapidly, we are using a lot of techniques helped by technological innovations, but also by invoking and promoting prejudices. For instance, the urban Naxalite. For instance, that human rights activists have no touch with reality. Sudha Bharadwaj was staying in Chhattisgarh. She could have gone anywhere. She was a brilliant woman. I'm a democratic and civil activist. I still live in a village. I go to my Gram Sabha. I vote in a village. So let's not make these sweeping generalizations. I think human rights activists and democratic and civil rights activists have lived a very tough life. And it's all the right to information law, any other law.
You give some solutions, then we'll know about it. How to deal with all these injustices that exist.
Right to information law, sir, was given to you by the poor people of Rajasthan and the civil rights people and the democratic rights people. The bureaucracy didn't give us the right to information law. It's a law which you use and I use and 60 lakh people use in this country. We've been fighting for food security so that poor people don't die of hunger. We have not fought with guns. For heaven's sake, don't have this uniform damnation of everybody. Because in your prejudice statements, you're forgetting that you also have a right. You have to have a right.
Hardly functioning. I hope you know that.
To your arguments. Now, please.
No. RTI is hardly functioning, so don't quote that.
But when you
in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, it's not working at all.
When you come out with these sweeping generalizations, please let me finish. I didn't talk in the middle of what you said. So if you give these sweeping generalizations, you mislead the public. Now, I'm just not going to talk about you, but about a general statement that this urban Naxalite, the coining of this phrase, the spreading of misinformation through this phrase, of talking about all people who speak against the system as being Naxals, as nobody knows exactly what Naxalite means today. The young of the country do not know. You talk of spreading rumors. This is one of the biggest rumors that has been spread. People are scared of the word Naxalite. Right. And then you ban us from having public spaces for protest. You call us all kinds of names and you call this a democracy. So what we are really fighting for is constitutional democracy. And in that, you will have to tolerate other people's opinions and also criticism. You can't just as I would have to, and I do listen to so many of you saying things about people who work outside the system, you'll also have to listen to criticism within the system. I'm not talking of you as an individual.
Amen Singh, let me get a quick final word from you.
You see, a lot of bias, prejudice against the police I find. I would like to allay the fear of the public about the police partiality or impartiality. The present police commissioner of Pune, Mr. Venkatesham, is a very fine police officer, very trustworthy. He will never do a wrong thing. I know him because he is my trainee and I have known him from the time he was a student.
Now you're using exactly the same argument that Prashant was using, which you were objecting to so violently.
Now listen. Let me come to the. Vikram.
So therefore, the entire argument of the civil society can be rejected.
Wait. Let Amen Singh finish what he's saying.
Vikram, I give due importance to the civil society activists and all these groups. They are doing very fine work, no doubt about it. But I have one grievance against them. They have so much complaint against the police, but the civil society has done nothing to reform the police. Only the police leadership has been talking from the rooftops and going to the Supreme Court and making appeals for police reform, which is pending for 30-40 years.
But how does
the civil society has refused to pay any attention to it?
For a government to reform the police and for the police to reform the police.
Unless,
MM Singh.
How does a civil society person go and reform the police?
But unless the civil society puts pressure on the government, nothing will move.
Okay, right now the government seems to be arresting the civil society, not far from listening to them. But anyway, I get your point. You're right, police reform should happen. And I think I'm going to call you back to have a big fight on that one of these days. But moving on, Prashant Bhushan, let me quickly try and get a last very quick word from you.
Well, this is not the first time that this plot to assassinate the PM or his erstwhile, when he was CM of Gujarat, has happened. There were 4 plots between 2003 to 2007 which were trotted out by the Gujarat police to assassinate Mr. Modi. It was only after the Supreme Court ordered SITs or CBI investigations into those, and they were found to be cold-blooded killings in the name of encounters of persons who had sought to come and kill Mr. Modi, that this whole industry of people plotting and coming to kill Mr. Modi came to a stop. Now again, the same kind of thing has been trotted out to create sympathy or fear, etc. We also saw in that JNU case that the police first arrested Kanhaiya Kumar, Umar Khalid, etc. by saying that they were plotting to dismember India, that they were part of a tukde gang, which was another phrase coined like urban Maoists, etc. And various videos and various stories that Umar Khalid went to Pakistan to take training from ISIS, etc. were trotted out at that time. Most of them turned out, almost all of them turned out to be fabricated. 3 years from the date that these people were arrested, the police has not yet been able to file any charge sheet against them. This is the kind of work that the police does for political considerations, and this is what the Pune police appears to be doing.
All right, Deshratan.
The entire panel that I heard, their advocacy for the people who have been arrested is clearly based on presumptions. Clear presumptions, faith and belief, either they are good friends, either they know them, but not on hard facts and evidence, one. Secondly, Maoism, Naxalism, Naxalism and urban Naxalism is a clear and present danger. Please read the CPI Maoist document called Urban Perspective of 2001, which they read out in 9th Congress, which is a very dangerous document. And I'll just
that's almost besides the point, because assuming what you're saying is correct.
Don't interrupt me in my final argument, final closing.
No, but I'm just not pointing it out. That I'm saying that hang on, we may agree that terrorists of Hizbul Mujahideen are very bad, but for me to arrest you and saying you belong to the Hizbul Mujahideen is a different issue.
There has to be a link. There has to be a link. That is the link. I'll answer that. That is the link, the evidence the police is saying they have got, and
which we are waiting to see what it is.
That will come in court. And secondly, Mr. Varvara Rao says he's a poet. Let us see his poetry for a while. He says, let us form platoons of 200 red armed guards to overthrow the Indian government. This is his poetry. He says that Kashmir and Hyderabad was invaded by India. This is his poetry. This is what you call his poetry and literature? Okay. These people should be condemned outright and should be taken to task.
All right, Meeta.
So I would say simply in one sentence, unless the police can come out with solid evidence, many in the country will feel that this was done to instill fear in those who dare to differ and criticize.
All right, that's a valid point. So I guess the crux of all of this is going to be, we'll soon know, won't we? 6th of September. Let us see, because already there was to some extent a stinging indictment from the Supreme Court. If at the end of the day, on the 6th of September, it turns out that actually there isn't too much evidence, then I think a lot of questions are going to be asked and are going to continue to be asked, and for correct reasons. If the evidence is there, then of course matters will take a completely different path. Suffice it just to say, obviously Naxalism, Maoism, terrorism, and attempts to kill the Prime Minister are all really serious efforts. But arresting people for it, that link with the evidence has to be established, and has to be established very clearly. Otherwise, the concerns expressed by Neerja and others would definitely come to light. You're watching The Big Fight. We'll be back next week.